Hi there, James.
Hey, Janelle.
I'm here today, everybody, for another episode of White and Woke at Work with James Possible. James is a Black wealth strategist all the way from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and I'm pleased to have him on today. James, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. I'm very excited.
I'm really excited to have you. So tell me a little bit about what does a Black wealth strategist do?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, especially me being white, right? And just kind of on topic with the conversation, white and woke. In no way am I suggesting that I'm woke. You and I talked about that a little bit. I would never own that word, right? It just because I'm not black, and I'll never be woke enough I'll never understand enough for me to call myself woke. So that's not going to happen. The It's just a matter of connecting passion, my passion. They say if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. And I've spent a lifetime trying to figure out what I love. And so money and wealth has always been something for me. And I just finally connected it with blackness and social justice and those kind of things. And so what I do as a Black wealth strategist is I work with Black and brown professionals, and specifically, I really enjoy working with socially, passionate social professionals who are really looking. I think one of the big subjects that I get back to me in conversation is the healing. People that want to heal the Black community, and they want to resolve themselves financially. They want to get themselves in a place where they can begin to contribute in a way that is powerful to the community, right? They want to promote and grow, and in America, this whole divide, this racial divide, it's a real divide. It's a system. The system has been designed that way, and so wealth has, since before the formation of the United States, it's just been stripped from Black people. And not only has it been stripped, but so much of the wealth today was actually built on the back of enslaved Black people. So it's a subject to me that's near and dear, just because it's something that has to change. I don't think America can be a great country today by modern standards unless we actually address the disparity in wealth that we have with the white community and the Black community.
So why do you care, James? What's in it for you? And
Well, that's an interesting question, right? So why do I care? Um, I I don't know that I can give you a specific reason why do I care. I just know I care.
where did the care start? Let's start there. Like at some point in your career, I assume you're a financial services professional.
Yeah.
So at some point in your career, you began to focus on the issues in the Black community, right?
Yeah, I think it's always been there a little bit, right? Because I grew up in the Bay Area. So, um, and I trained, I ran track. I was an athlete. And, I did some training in Oakland, California, predominantly a Black community. So, I grew up in a place where, um, now San Ramon itself was pretty white community, right? So, um, my buddy though, he actually, his family moved from Oakland, and they were our neighbors, and we became really, really good friends. So the odd thing is, when you're young, at least when I was young, I never really thought about um, race per se, right? I never really thought about, I knew in skin color we were different, but we never really acted different with each other, right? His mother, his family and I were really close, and um, yeah. So so I don't know, but I did know that there were some distinct differences for me. Um, I never really, like my father, he used the N word a fair amount. But now my family was divorced early, so wasn't really around him that much.
Mhm.
When I was around him, though, he did, and I basically had to tell him to just stop and shut up, because I just wasn't going to listen to it. Because I don't know, I never had that, and I don't know why, I just didn't. But then I moved to Oklahoma, and I moved back here to get closer to know my grandparents before they passed, because I didn't have a great childhood. So, you know, um, but Oklahoma is a much different place than California.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
very, very, very different. It's a
Tell
red,
us about that.
it's a very red state. And
And for those who don't understand what that means, what does a red state mean?
okay, red state means it's a Republican state, a very, very Republican state. And so it was, it was a shock, like culturally, because the last place I actually lived was in San Francisco, and I worked in San Francisco. And the number of people in San Francisco is just comparatively, it's just way different. So that was the first shock. And then the second shock was, it was just, people were different. Um, However, I didn't really bump up against the race issue much early on, just because, I mean, how do I say how, it, it just didn't have to, because I guess in my little world, everything was white. So, it wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
Um, and, I think we all tend to have that little bubble, no matter where we're at, we have those kind of bubbles. But I still have my buddy in California. And then when I got into the restaurant business, that's where I started when I came back here, was in the restaurant business. And I will say, my absolute very best friend, who I don't even know where he's at anymore. Um, and he was part of my wedding. He Yeah, Jeffrey Washington. He was a Rolling Stone. He never really had a
At a
place.
home.
Yeah, I mean, really. And he worked in the last restaurant that I worked, and him and I were just so close. Um, he was probably the most genuine person I've ever known uh, in my life, and it was really weird, because him or we would think about one another, and then suddenly we'd bump into each other. I mean, it was just really. But he always had a bandana on his leg and stuff, and it was funny because he was very street, and but he was genuine, and he cared about people. And we always had great conversations, and we just really genuinely enjoyed each other. And it was funny, because in the wedding, he opened up his tux, and he had his bandana stuffed in the pocket of the wedding, so staying true to himself. But he's probably the only person I've known that was genuinely happy with his life as it was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Didn't to change it.
yeah, it's quite powerful. Um, but then, I think, so got married, children, and every now, how society is, every now and then little racial things bubble up, and they happen. And like, if I go back through my Facebook page, there will be comments from me about this and that, and things that, it's like, this is not something that we should be doing. And then, George Floyd, I think, like, like George Floyd set off so many people, right? It was just the turning point. Because I remember Rodney King, I thought that was a really big deal. I had issues with that. I remember talking about it, but it didn't really hang around. And then we had some other incidents and all that stuff that happened. But when 8 minutes and 46 seconds.
Yeah. I'm getting chilled. Like what?
How do you lean on somebody's neck?
Yeah.
For 8 minutes and 46 seconds? You're surrounded by a community, like real people in front of you, filming you, and your face is absolutely blank. Yeah. I mean, like my wife couldn't even watch the whole thing.
I'm sorry, you're making me emotional.
No, it's fine, but it's real. I mean, we've got to talk about it.
I would cry on my show.
It's Janelle, it's okay. It's okay because this is real, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking about what's making me cry is just, I mean, I was a teenager, I think, when Rodney King was beat, and that was serious, right? And I think that rocked the world, but people cared more, of course, about the riots and the destruction to the city of LA, right?
Right. Like, what the hell? Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, and I'm sorry I said hell. I get a little.
No, that's okay. That's okay. We've had on this show.
But you asked me why I care. Why wouldn't I care? I guess is the bigger question. Why wouldn't I care? Yeah. Come on, I can't look at you because of your skin color and say, well, you're this, and this. I don't think like that. And look, I get it. So I'm white. Why would I care about? I do. I just do. And that may not match up with everybody, but that's okay. I only have to match up with a certain number of people where I can make enough to take care of my family, but I can also change their life financially and through wealth as well, right?
Yeah.
You want to know the name I hold on to? James Byrd Jr.
Why is that?
Because he's not talked about enough. And this was a Black man that was tied to the back of a pickup. Yeah. And this is in modern history by 3 white men and dragged across the blacktop until his body literally fell apart.
Yeah.
Now you think about his last moments, just think about that.
I know.
Not even, I can't even touch the hate, or I don't even want to call it hate, because I think if we give it that word, that's make it so simple, we're actually giving them a reprieve, because it's much more than that. It's just like, what does it take to do that to another human?
Right.
And you asked me why I do it. Well, that's part of it, because the white elites, and we got to be really clear about that, because when our country was founded, it wasn't like this whole population of whites that said this is the way we're going. It was 6% of the population that only voted, landowners.
Right.
Come on. And they set up the system in a way that they had no desire, no intention for the enslaved African Americans. And you couldn't even really call them Americans back then, just the enslaved Africans. They had no intention for them to have a say in our republic.
Yep. Or
to be considered, especially they weren't going to be considered equal. That was not in the cards.
No, not at all.
And so I had to find a place in my whiteness where not in my white, I had to literally, this is how it worked for me, Janelle, when I actually came to terms with all of this, because I think privilege, when I heard the term white privilege, man, that hit me. It was just like a truck, just whoosh. I was like, because I got it.
Oh,
I
you
got
did.
it.
You weren't angry. You weren't like, oh no.
Oh, no, no, I immediately understood it.
Mhm.
I was like, holy shit. Wow. But I hadn't gone deep with it, right?
Yeah.
But I understood immediately, wow, I have so much damn privilege. It's not even funny because I'm white. And that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I got it immediately. And then, of course, I started digging down into it. Well, not of course, not everybody does, right?
How long ago was that, James? That you had that kind of awakening?
Well, because I think the first time I heard the white privilege, it wasn't really that long ago, right?
Mm.
It was probably shortly after George Floyd.
Oh, was it? It was this
Yeah,
year. I
yeah,
never heard about white privilege before that.
never.
Oh my God. And
Yeah,
you're working in the field of Black wealth.
right now, but I've just really jumped into that, right? I've just really owned that, right? So, um, which is part of the journey as an entrepreneur, right? You don't, we're always told the niche,
Mhm.
go down to the smallest audience possible. And I never could get that figured out. I
Mhm.
never could get that figured out. But what I did, I finally had this moment where I sat down with myself, and I it's really hasn't been that long, Janelle. But I said, because the money, like I enjoyed money. Like I trade the Forex markets. And so I teach and coach trading.
Okay.
And so money, in fact, it was my interest in the stock market that decades ago actually caused me to purchase my first computer, because I was like, oh, I want to study this. I'm interested in patterns. I mean, my mind is about patterns and stuff, right? So money has always been a thing for me. Um, Wealth wasn't.
Mhm.
And when I started putting all the pieces together, when I actually realized what wealth was, I was so mad, because we're not taught about these things.
Right.
White and black, we're just not taught about money.
No.
And so I spent decades doing my work in IT, struggling because I didn't understand the number one thing as an entrepreneur that I should be building and focusing on. I always thought it was money and income.
Mhm.
If I had problems, more money. And that's not the answer.
No.
No, you've got to understand how to go from income and money to wealth. Wealth has got to happen. I kind of got off topic there.
No, no.
Um,
Okay.
but so the white, so I got the white privilege. I mean, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was just like, holy crap. I mean, I got it. And I think part of, and you have mentioned this before, and I think you and I have back and forth a little on it. Um, the thing that really cracked me open on all of this was my wife.
Really?
Yes. And I'll tell you why, because I'm a man. See, here's the thing. I'm white, I'm a man, I'm older. So I'm like right in that perfect area that is like, yeah, you're the one with all the isms and all the issues, man. You've got it in spades, right?
Yeah.
And, um, so the first part of my life was I had to get past my dad, and he drank all the time, and it's interesting because I you you know I it's taken me all this time to actually accept how much his drinking impacted me.
Oh.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because when he drank, he was mean as hell, and but I never really accepted that and embraced it. And it's interesting, right? So
Mhm.
I had to get past that. And if you talk to my family, like I don't even have a relationship with my parents. The way I describe it is I've divorced my family. Um, and that's okay. That's not a bad thing, because we don't always end up with a family that is meant for us, right? It doesn't always lift us up.
Mm.
Um, and so I'm one of those people that's why I share that, because there are people out there that are being pressured into this idea, this notion that it's family and you've got to hang together because it's family. I'm like, no, 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 no. There's times when if your family, if it's tearing you down so far that you can never find yourself, you've got to step away from it.
Yeah.
And does that mean it has to stay like that? No, but you first have to find your own strength, your own internal strength. You've got to find a way to be with yourself and to like yourself, and love yourself really, and then be able to advocate for yourself before you can go back into that kind of a situation, right? Because if you can't trust and activate for and advocate for yourself,
Mhm.
you cannot be around people that trigger you. You can't,
Yeah.
because all they're going to do is take you down.
So how did your wife help that situation?
Yeah, yeah. You notice that I have many tracks running in my mind. So
I'm the same. I'm the same.
So,
I start talking and it's like, oh yeah, I need
yeah,
to focus myself.
yeah. You got to keep me aligned here.
No
And
worries.
okay, so my wife, the white male, right?
Yeah.
Now I knew that I wasn't my dad, right? I knew that, and it wasn't that song that, well, here I am, I became my dad. No, it's not that, not at all. So I knew that was clear. So I wasn't a chauvinist. However, I grew up with male privilege. Now that was probably so much harder for me to own than white privilege.
Really?
Oh yeah, it was like I I did not want to admit, because I'm a man, that I had privilege
And you
over.
didn't want to think that, the world is sexist and that women are,
Yes,
subjugated in society. Like everyone's equal.
yes. Well, I know I wouldn't say equal, Janelle, but I had it kind of like, I think I had it compartmentalized in a way that it was never in my world, right? It was never in my circle, right? Like like the perfect white racist comment, right? Well, I'm not racist. You know what I mean? I'm not racist. I have my best friend's black, or
Right.
yeah, I have
I'm
so
not
many.
sexist. I'm married to a woman.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah. So
I make her do all the laundry.
yeah. So so it was very much that kind of a thing. But my wife went through this stage, and this was well before George Floyd, and it was probably about 3 years. She was mad as hell.
Really?
Really?
About what?
Men.
Really?
Really? And it's interesting because I grew up with a mom. Again, she was, they were divorced. I can tell you stories of when my dad left, and I can tell you the stories of her looking at the bills, and all the bills were in his name. And back then, that was a challenging thing because they tended to do everything in the man's name, not the woman's name.
Right.
Like they didn't really even exist. But she was a fan of Tina Turner because that was the kind of woman she saw herself being, right? That, you're a man, but you ain't nothing compared to me. And so she had that attitude.
Mm-hmm.
So so I grew up with that. I had that. I understood that. I say I knew. I don't know that I understood parts of it. I don't, as a teenager, I didn't get all of it, obviously. But then fast forward to now, my wife and these 2-3 years of anger, and I was like, well, what the hell? I thought I understood this, and I kept saying this to her, right? Not necessarily in those exact words, but it was always implied, and she'd be like, really? And so it took time for me to process that I didn't know shit when it came to being a woman, because I thought I was actually woke when it came to being a woman, okay? I thought I was a woke man. And I was like, she taught me so damn fast that no, you weren't.
How long ago did you guys get married?
We've been married 35 years.
Oh my God, and she just turned the light bulb on for you.
Yeah, yeah. See, we have a very different relationship. I mean, we we call each other lovers and friends and stuff like that. And it's interesting because other couples will look at us like, that's your wife, right? I said, yeah. They don't get that. And it's like, to us, that's really odd. Why wouldn't you still feel that way
Yeah.
if that's who you're married to? And that's absolutely how we were. Yeah, and I guess we have a little Italian in our, because we definitely, like my youngest son, he said the other day, you two are the most, what was the word he used? Because we will have moments where we just go back and forth shouting at each other, but and it took him the while to actually understand, well, no, we're not fighting, we're just, that's our communication. Then we move away and we come back, right?
Yeah.
But this whole thing, so she'd been a bartender for years, so she understood men from the bar, right? She dealt with all that stuff. She learned all the jokes, knew how to do all that. And today, in the world she's in, she's dealing with salesmen and all that stuff. And it's really interesting because they will come at her in a way, I guess, a microaggressions, you would say.
Mm-hmm.
And they might even try to push her back by telling an off-putting joke. But she goes one further with them. She takes that joke and she goes the next step deeper with them and buries them, in a way, because she makes it just a little bit more disgusting. So they're like, oh, okay, I get it. And they stop going to that place.
Right.
And the fact that she has to even go there so she can get them to pay attention to her, it's ridiculous.
So
that
makes you, like, that consciousness that you now have about the things that she's gone through has, I guess, increased your awareness of your privilege and other aspects of your life.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because it has. It's just because I really did have to ultimately just shut up and listen. And now the funny thing is, like, we'll be watching TV, and I don't like to watch commercial TV, but sometimes she tends to. I don't know why she does, but she does. And there'll be commercials, and they'll do this woman thing, and I'm like, honey, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't that like really bad? She said, yeah, it was. so like I'm noticed. So like I can't turn it off now, right? Because I get it.
Yeah.
I notice it, right? Now, again, I'm not woke. I get it. I don't live it. So she's really good with cars.
Mm-hmm.
So if she goes somewhere to a place to buy parts or something, talks to somebody, she knows her shit. And so sometimes men behind the counter will try to tell her, and she'll have to quickly correct them and let them know that I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Right. And so now we move that to the privilege of being white and George Floyd. And then, like, wait a second, this is really, really screwed up. And once I got into the white privilege and I really started breaking that down, here's what I realized. I realized that I could actually take my whiteness and I could actually, like, kind of set it over here to the side.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, it was like, like a suit.
You're having an out-of-body experience.
Yeah. So I could actually remove this thing called whiteness and put it over here, and then suddenly see in an empathetic way a truth about blackness that I couldn't see through the veil of whiteness. And it was like, holy shit. How did I not get this?
So were you internalizing some of that Republicanness that you had inherited through your movie?
That's a great question. I don't think so, because I wasn't really around a lot of that. Because when that stuff bubbles up, I can tell you that internally it's never felt good. And so I tend to remove myself from those kind of situations, right? When, say, there's a group of white guys and then they start to get into this derogatory man moment about Black people, and I have to remove myself. I can't stay there. And yeah, and I've had moments where I simply didn't feel safe. Like if I really wanted to say what I was thinking, there's no way I would have felt safe enough to even engage it. I just quietly removed myself from those situations. When Obama took office out here, because this is oil country, I could tell you that many of my clients, I had several oil clients, and on the doors, like it was almost universal, at least it was in my world, they all had Obama posters slapped on the front of their business doors, not just, literally, and they were degrading, and I can't remember the exact verbiage, but it was, in essence, he's not our president, and, and they made it clear that he's not welcome here. So so I just started breaking this down, and that led me into understanding, starting to lift the veil on history as well, right?
Right.
Because, like, holy shit, come on. Christopher Columbus. So I knew at some point, I think in my 20s or 30s, I clued into the reality that Christopher Columbus didn't know shit, and he was being given credit for stuff I knew that just didn't make sense. But I didn't know what dots I wasn't seeing to connect. And so here we are. Now I've dug down into it. Now I understand this system. It's this system that intentionally had to create white and Black, so there could be this social divide. And it's horrific. Yeah.
So what makes you different, James? Like, why would you not just, adopt the values of the typical person from Oklahoma? And I'm assuming here, because, I've never been
to,
but,
I can't say
the presumption is that, it's like you said, it's a red state, it's Republican, it's likely racist. And, you're coming from LA, and from Oakland, and so you've got that open perspective. You've had Black friends, you've got the diverse perspective, but then you could become seriously entrenched, and like you said, you see the Obama posters, and you can start to internalize this belief that you're superior. So
that is interesting, right? Because it's such a great point. And I think about growing up where I grew up, and I think about my experiences with, Black friends and such, and greetings and stuff, shaking hands differently and those kind of things, just acknowledging people differently. And I had a moment, probably about a year or two ago, where I realized that I no longer had that natural greeting. And it was a very awkward moment with Mark is his name. He worked at one of the businesses, and he's Black. And it was like, I didn't know how to greet him. It was just really weird. And I realized that, wow, I've been so far away. I've been so long away from where I grew up, and I've been in this bubble that, I'm now awkward. In not even confronting, but just being with Blackness. And it was just like, shit, that just really sucks. And it just, so I did have that moment. And of course that was before George Floyd. So
Right.
yeah, there is an impact, right? Your bubble, your circle does absolutely impact you. It does absolutely influence you. And you can't not deny that. You just can't. But I also have to, at some point, I have to embrace my humanity and understand that I'm not going to do this perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not. And I don't have hate. I don't have those sense of feelings. Um, I have to say, as a white person, yes, I know I've been racist. I know I have. I know I'll do stupid racist shit till the day I die at some point in time, right? And in a video I was listening to, Robert D'Angelo, and I know she gets she has mixed challenges, but this video was just short enough, and there were some talking points that she brought up, I thought were extremely valid, and from my perspective is that you have to be willing to allow the Black people that are in your life to like confront you. Like when I do make that mistake, when I do say something that doesn't come off right, that does come out racist, I have to be willing to accept feedback. Hey, I don't think that's what you were saying, but this is how it came out, and this is how it feels, or this is how I heard it.
Right.
And I have to be willing to accept that, right?
Yeah.
Because that's not about me. That's about being Black. And I think if that one thing, if the white population just owned that one thing and said, look, instead of me having this reactive experience with you, you calling me a racist or you talking about racism in America, instead of me pushing back and denying and fighting it and resisting you, if I would just stop and say, okay, so tell me more, tell me why. And if we began to have that kind of a dialogue,
Mm-hmm.
because it just think about your friends, right? Your friends, you have those moments where it's like, wait a second, did you really just say that to me?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so if we're going to have mixed relationships like that, racially and ethnically, then all of us have to be willing to go back and forth in that way. It's like, wait a second, it's like in the beginning of our marriage, my wife and I, we actually came to this truce. Is like, we have to be able to tell each other when that didn't feel good, if something was said. And we did that for a long time. It's like, that didn't really feel good. And so then we shift conversation. And it's just that simple. And we are born into a system of whiteness that educates us in whiteness, and it embraces and it benefits us in whiteness. Now, does that mean there are no white people in America that are not challenged? Yeah, of course there are, but that's not the thing that we're talking about.
Right.
And we have to understand that. It's like Liz Liba. She goes Elizabeth Liba, but
Mm-hmm.
we were talking, and she made a great point. She said, so let's say there's a bum on the street, a white bum, and he's all bummed up. He's just looking bad, dirty, and all that stuff. That comes from living and sleeping on the street,
Mm-hmm.
not making a judgment on the person, but just the realities of the conditions.
Right.
She said, you could take him, clean him up, shower and everything, put him in a nice suit, and then put him into an office, and he would be accepted easier than somebody who is Black. that's racism.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's it right there.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is, and I know in my world, it's interesting because from the white perspective, it always came to me, the conversation around education. I think you'll like this. The conversation I grew up with was that the smart people, the really, the academic kind, they really don't get it, right? They don't really ever do anything much in life,
Really?
right? Yeah, that's what I grew up with.
Hmm.
It's really wild. And the arguments were all, I mean, there were several different arguments, right? And I know there was one that I knew of about accounting. I always heard it this way: the C student would become the business owner, and the A students would become the workers for the C student. I always heard that. But the point is that I never really had conversations that celebrated education. It's interesting, right?
Yeah.
But now my circle is predominantly Black. And I got to tell you, Janelle, holy crap. More degrees, more PhDs, more certifications than I could ever imagine. I'm like, I mean, that literally inspires me, because it's like, wow. Because now I'm thinking, because I didn't finish college. And so now I'm thinking, wow, I want some of that, because I just like the way it looks. I like the way it sounds. I love the excellence, because there is nobody around me that's half-ass.
That's awesome. Why did your circle change, James?
Well, I think it changed just because of all of this.
Yeah.
This movement from Floyd to this, and because my world's online. That's my world. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I
And
mean, my world, it is. It's online. So that's where I meet, and I know so many people.
so tell me about your company, and I guess what you're doing now to improve things for Black people. Tell me what's the fast track strategy for Black wealth?
Oh, that's a little bit more involved in a minute or two. And that's why the master class is 5 days, right? So there's many components to it. But I think the big thing, one of the big components is understanding the obstacles that are it's like the race thing.
Mm-hmm.
The advantage to the white population, it's built into the system.
Right.
Like it doesn't even matter what I do, I still have advantage because I'm white. It doesn't matter how I live with it or deal with it. There's no way I cannot take advantage of being white.
So you're teaching a master class in financial wealth for Black people.
Yeah, it starts December 7th. So by
no
the
white
end of
people
it,
can join.
no, absolutely they can. Okay. Absolutely. Yeah. There's no, I'm not excluding like that.
What's the name of the course?
It's Fast Track Your Wealth Strategy for 2021.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So that 5 days, those 5 days is all about putting together a strategy, a wealth strategy for 2021.
Okay.
And then also putting together a financial plan, a money plan. So for 2021, you can begin to take a different approach to money and wealth. Like for many people, they may not, like I said, they probably don't understand, so many people, the distinction of money and income versus wealth. It's a huge distinction.
Right. And
money and income is very temporary. If we don't do anything with it, it's just temporary. Mm-hmm. And so we may, it's that old, it's not an adage, but you have those moments in your life. I think most people experience this, where you suddenly have this you have an abundance of money, much different than other moments. So it's like, okay, so in that moment, what do you do with that money? Do you spend it? You know, how do you use it? You've got credit card debt and other debt. How are you going to pay off debt? Now suddenly you don't have the money. You know, what are you doing with it?
Right.
And that's a discussion that's important. But so for that moment in time, when you have that excess money, and I would say it's not really excess, but it feels like it, right? You there's a sense of power, right? There's a sense of control, a sense of even freedom, but it's very temporary because it's dependent on that money. It's not dependent on the wealth, and the wealth is really the foundation. And so we have this predatory system, and that's what I really work to break down, is understanding how the system works against you.
Yeah.
So then you can begin to take actions that don't support the system, rather they support you.
So
And
what
in
actions are you taking now, James?
me,
Yeah, what actions, particularly to be, the anti-racist that I see you being online?
specifically to anti-racism,
Mhm.
or to the wealth too,
To
or
anti-racism.
well, I look at it like this. I cannot come from a perspective of blackness, right?
Mhm.
I can't, because I'm white. So I do, if I'm going to own this, if I'm going to be here, and I am, I feel that it's incumbent upon me then to be willing to engage and have the uncomfortable white conversations where, what was it, somebody the other day, and that was on LinkedIn. How did he respond? Oh, yeah, I asked somebody if they identified as being a white American. And I think this is a really important point, because my friend Olivia, she talks about this because she's biracial, right?
Mhm.
And it's not enough just to look at skin color. We if you really care about this issue and you really want to break it down, this is my take, and I don't. It's just my take and how I'm approaching it. If you look white to me, which we could have a discussion about that, right? You
Yeah.
still benefit. You still benefit, right?
Mhm.
But I also want to know, are you identifying as white? Because your skin color doesn't absolutely tell me everything about your family background, right?
Right.
It just doesn't. And so I want to have that clarity coming forward. And it's interesting because just asking that question, Janelle, oh, that twists people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like it's interesting. You think the white privilege twists people, asking them how they identify in America is it twists them even harder, is what it feels like for me in the interactions I've had. So I had this gentleman. He was not the person that I asked the question to, but he responded, "Not that you asked me, but I identify as American."
Mm.
And then he went on to share that that was that did not have anything to do with race and blah 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 blah, the stuff we've all heard, right?
Yeah.
And ultimately I shared with him, I said, that's perhaps one of the most racist comments I've read on LinkedIn. And so he quickly came back and he wanted me to well, can you like clip the piece out that is racist? I'm like,
Nope.
I didn't really respond back to that directly. No, exactly. No, I can't, because it's the whole damn thing that's racist.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, and so that's where I'm on the ground and having the conversation with these people, like saying, no, you're not getting the conversation that we're really wanting to have here. You're
Mhm.
not getting it. And then you want to talk about being red, and then you want to say, you want to back a man that says that he's done more for Black people in America than anybody, a man that wouldn't even honor John Lewis, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't honor him on his death, all because he had pushback from him, right? All because they had some back and forth. So what does that tell you? How much does that man, I just, yeah, and then here he is coming into the end of his presidency. And what is he doing? He is forcing, and this has not happened in over 100 years easily, but he's forcing the execution of 6 different people, and 5 of them are Black.
Right.
One's a woman. And there are questionable cases there. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like, how can you even look at this man and think that that's true? It's like the Central Park 5. If you really do the homework on that, this is a man that crucified those 5 boys, and this was before he was president.
Yeah.
But he publicly crucified them in a letter to the public, stating that they should be treated appropriately, right? And it's like, wait a second. So he basically prosecuted them. And what did we find out about them? It wasn't them.
Yeah.
But yet they were imprisoned.
Yes. So for those who may not know, the Central Park 5 was a young group of teenage boys that were accused of raping a white woman in Central Park many years ago. They were tried and prosecuted as a group based on their testimony and confession. One of them confessed, I think, after a horrible, lengthy interrogation, and they were since exonerated. None of them were responsible for the crimes. And at the time Donald Trump wasn't president, he was condemning them in the press.
Yeah.
Yeah. So were you aware of it at the time, James, or
no?
Or the Central Park story came out after the fact?
No, no, I wasn't. I mean, I heard mention of it, but not a lot of press around me. I'm not a big news person.
Mm-hmm.
That's changed. That has changed, because I'm realizing now that.
So when did you find out about the Central Park 5?
This has all been this year. Like,
oh my gosh, James, you've been like doing your homework and researching and reading like crazy.
Oh, Janelle, I've been like compressing
like years of blackness into like a few months.
Yeah. So I know I'm being clumsy at times, right? I absolutely know that I'm being this awkward white guy in some conversations, and I've been called out, and that's fine. I'm fine with that. I'm like, do that, please. I can handle that.
But you're learning and you're trying and you're resisting.
Yeah, because it's just like, this is just so much. My first exposure, my first awakening was probably decades ago. And that's when, and this is the money thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I heard this term, this phrase, Black Wall Street.
Yeah.
And again, this was like probably 15 years ago. And I was so intrigued with that, right? Because money, right? I was like, Black Wall Street, wow, what is that? And so I started doing the research. And of course, I'm in Oklahoma. That was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where that happened.
Right.
The Greenwood district. And wow.
Yeah.
I don't even know how do you. Yeah, I just, how do you wipe out a community because of color? Now, sure, they wanted to blame this one event, this elevator event, that we still don't even have a really clear, there was no clear picture. And at the worst, he touched this woman on the elevator.
Yeah.
Acceptable. And it was just an excuse, right? It was like it's just an excuse to just attack. And yeah, so they encircled this community. They even had planes dropping incendiary devices. I mean, you just got to think about the level of attack and assault on this community.
Yeah.
First, they looted them. First thing we got to do, though, is get all the valuable stuff out, right? And then we start to, then we'll start killing, and then we'll start tearing down everything.
Yeah.
And never mind. And I have shared this over the years that I actually feel that this was the purest example of capitalism that I've ever seen, and or known of, is Black Wall Street. And it wasn't intentional. It was born out of necessity. So they were pushed to the other side of the tracks. They built their community up. They weren't, because it was a Black community, they weren't allowed to go to the white schools. They didn't have any of that privilege. So they began to build a community. And over time, they actually began to understand that the more we keep our money in our community, the stronger our money gets. So, and this is really a strong lesson, right?
Right.
That as America, we didn't do. We lost track of that in 71 and 72. We started pumping money out, and that's what weakened us, really absolutely pushed us down this path of financial devastation. So this economy that Trump talks about is just absolute crap. He doesn't know what he's talking about. But anyways, so they, Janelle, their schools were better than any of the white schools that they would have ever had the opportunity to attend. They had theater, they had restaurants, not just one kind of restaurant. They had different types of restaurants. And when I see some of the pictures and stuff of them, just going about their day, they were a Black community.
Yeah.
Thriving, self-supporting. They were funding their own entrepreneurship, right? Their own expansion.
Yep.
I mean, holy cow. How amazing is that? How remarkable is that? And, this goes back to kind of the conversation that Liz and I had, is she talks about her first time, because she was in the military, and the first time going to a Black country, Jamaica. And she said, so on her bus ride into town to her, where she was going to be staying, she just randomly just started to cry. Tears just started to roll down her face. And it didn't take her long to recognize that all the billboards were Black people, and they weren't just Black, they were dark.
Yeah.
And then all the hustle and bustle in the streets, it was a Black community, right?
Yeah.
And that really moved her. And I had a conversation with another woman, and dare I say friend, because we just, wow, we talked forever. And we're going to do one of our Black Voice conversations. But she said, she went to a public college first, right? And it didn't take long. She said, no, I'm not doing this. And then she went to an HBCU. And she said, when she came out of that, that experience absolutely changed her life, because that experience taught her that she was beautiful as she is.
Yes.
Her Blackness was beautiful. The color of her eyes was beautiful. Her hair was beautiful. Everything about her was beautiful, because it was Black, because she is Black, And I'm like, shouldn't we all have that?
Absolutely. That dignity that comes with knowing it shouldn't matter, what your straits were, what your circumstances are, that you are good enough. It's funny, I was just reading a book to my kids this morning. It's called I Like Myself. And
Yeah.
it's this image of a little girl, and it's a poem, a little black girl sharing all the things she likes about herself, and it doesn't
Nice.
matter what other people think or feel, or you know, I can be my silly self. My hair is gorgeous. I love my nose. I love my eyes. I love my toes. It's like that kind of
Yes.
cute rhyming type of thing. But yeah, it's to inspire the next generation. I'm hoping to inspire my kids to
Oh,
and to
absolutely.
love themselves, right? It's to teach them early, that their skin is beautiful and that their hair is beautiful, and even if the world tells them that they're not beautiful, because it will,
Yes,
um,
it will. It
that
will.
there's value in the way that they look, and that they should be accepted just as they are. My son says some horribly problematic things about, mommy, I don't love myself. I said, oh, well, that's the perfect time where we're going to read this book. Already he's 7 years old and he's saying, mommy, I don't love myself. Well, I was like, well, I reject that. I was like, I don't even want to hear that. Let's go read the book.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
He knows now, like he's just trying to defy me. Like he's trying to, he knows I'm not going to let him go there. Right. I'm not buying any of that.
But there's beauty in that, right?
Yeah.
Because we we like knowing that we have limits. And so on some level, playfully, he's knowing that I have a limit with her.
Oh
But I
yeah.
like, but it's a playful point, right? But
Yeah.
it's a heart connection, right? It's a point of connection.
Yeah. And maybe
And
in some ways it's him seeking validation for me to say you are beautiful. And I
and if
tell
it
him
is,
that all the time, right?
absolutely, come on with it. Because I absolutely, as a father, and my wife will tell you she doesn't know how I did it, because I didn't grow up with what I gave my children. But I knew this, Janelle. I knew my children would know they're loved,
Mm-hmm.
and that they would always have a place if I was alive where they could come. And if they were ever in trouble, um, I would do everything I could to help them.
That's what
And
it's all about. I mean,
yeah,
that's whether you're white or you're black,
yeah,
that's what it's all about, right? We want to inspire that love and nurture our children. And we want a world in which, it doesn't matter, right? Except the love from us to them, and let them know that they can achieve anything, right? That's what
oh
it's
yeah, absolutely, right. Because like, and my youngest boy, he just turned 20 today. Um, he had just had a recent experience with his friends and stuff that was, sometimes friends can be really cruel.
mm-hmm.
Um, but he shared with me, because my wife would take him to school, I would pick him up, and I'm so chatty, but I'm chatty in a way where I'm always talking about the kind of things we just talked about.
Yeah.
Caring about yourself. What does it mean to have a healthy relationship with yourself and with others? How
Mm-hmm.
do you know when people are not treating you well?
Right.
And those are the discussions that him and I have had forever. And he thanked me. He said, um, I appreciate that, because I can handle this moment because of you, because I
That's
know, you know what I
that's
mean?
awesome. James, I really hope you do continue to use that motivating and powerful voice that you have, and the care that you're showing to your son, and that you take that and you use it as fuel for our community, the black community as well, because I see your heart, I see all the things you're doing online, and I reached out because I thought, here's a guy who he's putting it all on the line. You've got Black Wealth Matters as your backdrop, so I know that you really care about this, and I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and your personal life, your
Oh,
family, and
no, thank you. Yeah,
everything with me.
yeah, it's one of those things that, there's probably more reasons to say no to what I'm doing
Mhm.
than there are yes. And I don't know. I'm going to go down fighting.
Good for you. So anyway, thank you so much for coming on. And if anybody wants to reach James, he's James Possible on LinkedIn, or you can reach him at My Radical Wealth on all other social platforms.
Yeah, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, even the LinkedIn link is My Radical Wealth. So yeah.
Excellent. And I'm Janelle Benjamin, founder and CEO of All Things Equitable. You can reach me at JB_Equitable on Twitter or Janelle Benjamin on LinkedIn. And don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel if you loved the show, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, James.
Thank you.